schizophrenia is a fascinating condition, and it can't simply be summed up as overdrive in the left hemisphere to compensate for hypofunction in the right hemisphere, but that's to take a very complex phenomenon and make it sound simple. But that is one of the very important aspects, probably the single most important aspect to understand if you try to understand schizophrenia. It's as though somebody's left hemisphere was ramped up to the maximum and was trying to do all the understanding of the world that normally the right hemisphere would be supplying, and is not supplying for them. So they take things that should be understood as metaphorical or whatever literally. They try to solve things by taking them apart to see if they can understand what they are. They have strange beliefs which are entirely rational. If you have lost any kind of sense of the context of the world as experienced. So, for example, they're sitting in a room and they hear a voice speak to them. Now, you or I would look around and think, that's very odd. It must be my imagination. It must be my mind that's doing this. But they think, but it's very clear, this voice, it must be somebody, and I can't see them. So they must be speaking through something that gets into this room. What are they speaking through? Oh, that plug, that socket on the wall over there. That's the only way they could be getting in. So it must be people who've taken over the electronics. Who would that be? My neighbors. It must be my neighbors. So they build up an idea that the neighbors are speaking to them through appliances and so forth in a very sort of technical an entirely rationalistic way, but it is totally unreasonable. I mean, there's all the difference in the world between being rationalistic in a mechanical sense and being reasonable. In fact, they're almost opposites. Being reasonable means not doing that, but allowing one's rational mind to operate with all the things that one knows from experience and from intuition. So it's what a wise judge would have. Not that he's lost the ability to follow an argument, but he's able to take in more than just dogma, if you like. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that confusing of the internal with the external, that reminds me of some people, there's a phrase nowadays, maybe you're familiar with it, when they have some insight or creative spur that seemed to come out of nowhere, which before we used to characterize as a Eureka moment, or just something occurred while you slept and your brain reorganized itself, what have you. Rather than them saying, oh, I solved this problem, they say, I've downloaded. It's
Absolutely.
been a download.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is very much interesting that people with schizophrenia tend to talk about their brain as a mechanism. They say there's something wrong with my brain. It's just a simple point. But people who have depression tend to say there's something wrong with my mind. And people with schizophrenia have this technical way of thinking. I did some research when I was at the Maudsley on the subject studied by people who had psychotic breakdowns while at university and were referred to the Maudsley Hospital because it's a tertiary referral center for these sort of things. And what I found was that people who became schizophrenic were overwhelmingly studying either engineering or analytical philosophy, which is interesting because Dan Dennett said, if I hadn't been a philosopher, I'd have been an engineer. And I remember he was asked by some journalist, do you think we have a soul? He said, of course I do. And it's made up of lots of tiny little robots. So there you have a kind of psychopathology, which leads people to easily fit into the reductionist, materialist, Anglo-American analytic way of looking at the world alone. So but the people who had psychotic illnesses of an affective nature, so what used to be called manic depression or is now called bipolar disorder, they were almost all studying things like history, literature, music, and so forth. So, and those are things that one would imagine the right hemisphere would be much better at understanding, and the engineering and the philosophy things that the left hemisphere would be much better at understanding.
So the reason why I recommend your book, there's only 2 books that I mentioned. It's Gödel Escherbach and Master and His Emissary, is because, well, I will tread on this delicately. Let me think about how to say this. I've had many excursions with elixirs. Let's say it like that.
It's okay.
And pharmacological peregrinations. Let's say that. Okay.
Okay, I love it.
And many are absolutely pleasant, more than that, and many have experiences of the right brain sort that you mentioned before in the positive sense, imbuing the world with meaning and so on. And I'm not just speaking about pharmacological interventions. I'm also just saying meditative practices and so on. But there were a couple times where I've had terrible experiences, and I won't speak about them in detail. I can talk to you about them off air, but it's beside the point. I had something that was akin to a psychotic break, and I had to go to the hospital. I called myself into the hospital just because I was worried. What may I do?
Yes.
I don't know. I didn't feel like I was in control.
Yes.
And that shocked me. I couldn't actually, I couldn't, it was so terrifying. I stopped even pursuing consciousness on this channel for almost a year. And that was in part the advice of the therapist that I was seeing, because afterward I told my family doctor. The family doctor said, see a psychiatrist and see a therapist. So I saw a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist was not concerned because this was a one-off event. And that made me so relieved, because I thought I was confessing something that was extremely terrifying and that would lock me up. And then they're like, oh no, so, and what are your thought patterns like now? And they just took notes. They're like, yeah, no, you're fine. Just continue to speak to a therapist about this. Just work through it. There's nothing you need. That's a pill. You're fine. Okay, great, cool. The therapist said what was occurring with me, at least this is one of her viewpoints, was that what I'm doing here with this channel, it's called Theories of Everything. And every week, sometimes bi-weekly, twice a week, I interview someone on, oh, here's how reality works. And it's completely different than the last person. And I am right-brained in the sense that I'm extremely open, almost too open. And I used to repudiate people who would say, you shouldn't keep your brain so open that your head falls out or your brain falls out. I would say, yeah, you're just trying to justify your own closed-mindedness. I'm going to be open-minded. And I can't, there's something in me that can't, it's difficult for me when someone is telling me their theory for me to think they're a fool. It's extremely difficult for me to think that. I think, okay, maybe you're onto something. I'm going to treat it like you're being honest, and I'm going to see where this leads me. And so what that was doing was, it was as if every week, what ordinarily takes someone a lifetime to get from point A to B, I was traveling the world every week and just shaking up my head. Not even the world, traveling to the moon, traveling the galaxies. And I needed to start to say, okay, what these people are saying are just their points of view. You don't have to buy them wholesale. Even though I felt like that's my job, I still feel like that's my job. Like, I can't dismiss people.
No.
I have to, one, be able to emulate them in my head in order to know that I've done enough preparation, and 2, be able to see the world from their point of view. But anyhow, getting back to Master and His Emissary, it was approximately at that time, either just before or just after, that I started to read, what I've been doing was firstly narrowingly focus. All I was doing was thinking. I need to be in this world more, and that there's a co-creative aspect to even perceiving. And that's in part what you mentioned by attention is a moral act.
Yeah.
So when I'm with my wife, those are my days where I'm just in the being mode, where there's no goals. And your book, it may have helped save my life. I mean that. So, well, that's, someone can transcribe all of that and put that as a Google review for your book.
Well,
I mean it. I mean each word, and thank you.
well, that's lovely to hear. It means a lot to me. Thank you. You might be interested to know that you're by no means the only person who said that. It's people have said those very words. You saved my life, or my life has just been different and better since I read your book. And I never thought that I was doing something that would have that kind of impact, but apparently it does. So this is good, and I think it's because people recognize at an intuitive level what I'm saying at a more technical, well, not terribly technical, but at a more scientific and philosophical level. They recognize that it's right.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. If you're hungry for deeper dives into physics, AI, consciousness, philosophy, along with my personal reflections, you'll find it all on my Substack. Subscribers get first access to new episodes, new posts as well, behind-the-scenes insights, and the chance to be a part of a thriving community of like-minded pilgrimers. By joining, you'll directly be supporting my work and helping keep these conversations at the cutting edge. So click the link on screen here, hit subscribe, and let's keep pushing the boundaries of knowledge together. Thank you and enjoy the show. Just so you know, if you're listening, it's CurtJaimungal.org, CurtJaimungal.org.